my grandkids, and I hope that they get to see these videos sometime, and I hope other kids that I know have watched these videos are enjoying them and they're learning something. They certainly aren't perfect. I'm not a professional reader. I love to share the books that we have, and I hope you like this next one. This one's called The Worm Surprise, Learning About Love by Becky Freeman. Just beyond the peach trees, near the backyard pond, a boy named Gabe sat waiting and watching for critters. Gabe's big dog Daisy and his little dog Colonel lay in the shade, quiet as the summer breeze. They didn't want to miss the excitement if a critter showed up, because Gabe loves critters more than frogs love flies. He'd rather play with tadpoles than a room full of toys. He'd rather watch a pond of jumping fish than eat his favorite treat, peanut butter, pickle, and potato chip sandwiches with raspberry jelly on top. He'd even rather pet a baby rabbit than go splashing around in ooey gooey squishy mud. Gabe's big brothers, Zach and Zeke, tell him, "You're a critter crazy kid." "It's fun being crazy," he answers with a grin as he hangs by his knees pretending to be a possum. Gabe's sister, Rachel, once saw him playing with critters outside her bedroom window. "Put those creepy, crawly things down," she yelled. "They're dirty and disgusting." Gabe didn't even look up. Instead, he made a doodlebug highway in the dirt with his finger. "I like bugs," he said. Then, in an almost whisper, he added, "I like dirt. I like disgusting." To Gabe, all God's critters were beautiful, even if they were a little messy. But Gabe noticed that Mom liked pretty things with patterns, like china cups and fancy tablecloths. So today, Gabe was on the lookout for a quiet critter with a pretty design on its body. On this particular morning, Gabe was watching and waiting at the pond, hoping to find a perfect critter to give his mom for her birthday. Yesterday, he heard his mom telling Dad, "For my birthday, I just want quiet." There it was, the perfect critter, lying on a rock in the sun. It had climbed up on the rock so quietly that Gabe almost missed, what do you think it is? The turtle, with a bumpy green pattern on its back. Slowly, softly, Gabe waded out to the rock. Then he reached for the turtle, and there it is. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Ouch! Gabe squealed as the turtle snapped onto his little finger. Daisy and Colonel barked at the snapping turtle until it let go of Gabe's finger. "Even critter-crazy kids don't like being a turtle snack," Gabe hollered as the turtle slipped beneath a lily pad. "Anyway, moms don't like snappy, pitchy things." Gabe thought to himself as he took a giant step onto the log. Then he balance-walked over a big oak tree. On the ground by his feet, he spied the perfect critter. It was soft and smooth with blue feathers and a bright red tummy. The sort of pretty pattern any mother would love. But how do I catch it? Zach says, "I can catch a bird by sprinkling salt on its tail," Gabe remembered. Quickly he ran into the kitchen, grabbed a salt shaker, and darted back out the door. Slowly, softly, heels first, then toes, Gabe walked toward the beautiful feathered critter. But as soon as he was near enough to sprinkle salt on its tail feathers, the bird flew away. Again and again, Gabe tried until salt was everywhere. Then Gabe watched the bird fly to the tippy top, leaves of a big oak. "This is going to be harder than I thought." Tucking the salt shaker into the pocket of his shirt and grabbing onto a tree branch with both hands, Gabe began climbing after the bird until he reached his favorite lookout spot. That's when he heard the sound of loud chirping. He followed the noise with his eyes until he spied a blue ball of feathers sitting on a branch. Just this morning, I looked out my window. I saw two things. I saw a little tiny round bluebird, and then I saw a big red-headed woodpecker. Both were fun to watch. In a nearby nest, a mother bluebird was surrounded by three tiny baby birds. "So, you're a papa," Gabe whispered out loud, trying not to disturb the birds in the nest. "You'd make the perfect present for my mom, but don't worry, I couldn't take you away from your babies. They love you too much." So there he's peeking at them. And he sees the babies and the mama bird. Sadly, Gabe started to climb down the tree. Suddenly his foot slipped and he slid down the trunk of the tree, landing on a pile of leaves. He listened to the crunch, crunch sound that made as he fell. Then he closed his eyes, resting his head on his folded arms. Gabe was tired, and his finger was still aching from the turtle bite. He thought about all the fancy presents Zach and Zeke and Rachel and Dad had wrapped and waiting on the kitchen table for Mom to open later. But Gabe had nothing to give her. A tear made a path down his cheek. Boy, he really wants to get his mom a nice gift, doesn't he? He can't figure out what to get. Then he felt it. Something wiggly and squiggly and soft and tickly climbing up his arms. It made him giggle. When Gabe opened his eyes, he saw a whole family of wiggly, squiggly, soft and tickly worms playing in the dirt beneath the leaves. Quickly, Gabe scooped up the worms into a bucket and ran toward the house. He couldn't wait to give his mother her present. Not just one, but a whole family of critters. Gabe whistled happy birthday as he strolled into the kitchen, but Mom wasn't there. Spying Mom's glass of iced tea on the counter, Gabe thought of a great idea. A few seconds later, Mom walked into the kitchen. She was so thirsty. Down, down, down went the glass of iced tea. When she finished the last gulp, Mom saw Gabe's surprise. Her eyes crisscrossed in the middle. They seemed to be growing bigger and bigger. For a minute, Gabe wondered if eyeballs could really pop, and it worried him a little. Then he saw Mom's face turn his favorite color, bullfrog green. He knew for sure she was happy, so happy she couldn't even think of the words to say. "Happy birthday, Mom!" Gabe shouted, then looked down at the rest of the worms in the bucket. The one that hadn't taken a swim in her tea. The ones that hadn't gotten into her iced tea, right? "They're all for you." "Oh, Gabe," replied Mom in a most surprised voice. "You gave me worms in my tea for my birthday?" "Yes," said Gabe, "because you're the best mom in the world. Come see how special God made them." Mom took a step toward Gabe. He held one finger up to his lips. "Shh, listen. Worms are really, really quiet. Remember how you like quiet? If you look real close, you can see tiny, teeny stripes on them and puffy necklaces too. Aren't they pretty? Feel how soft and snuggly they are. That's why they're always hugging and hugging each other." Mom took a deep breath and peeked in at the family of snuggly worms. Finally, she smiled, a great big birthday smile. "Gabe," asked Mom with a grin, "do you know what?" "No, what?" I love you more than frogs love flies. Mom opened her arms wide. Gabe ran to her, and the two of them stood there for a long time, hugging and hugging, just like a couple of wiggly, squiggly, soft, and tickly worms. So here are some fun facts about worms. How does an earthworm move? An earthworm has about 150 tiny striped rings called segments on the body. They are made of muscle. As these segments squish up and stretch out, the earthworm is able to move forward. If you look at an earthworm up close with a magnifying glass, you can see that every segment has 4 pairs of tiny bristles that help it push along the dirt. And remember he said they all had fat necklaces? The fat necklace is called a saddle. Sometimes worms' saddles Sometimes worm saddles meet and hold together with a sticky jelly that their body makes. When the worms come apart, they both lay eggs in a little cocoon that looks like a tiny lemon drop. Worms are both father and mother, and they all lay eggs. Does a worm have ears and eyes? No. A worm does not have eyes or ears, but it isn't helpless. The front part of its body can feel the difference between dark and light. It can also feel the tiniest movement in the dirt. When Gabe plops down on the ground, it must sound like a thunder to the worms. Why don't worms come out in the daytime? Worms only poke their heads out at night because too much light can kill them. Oh my, that's interesting. What do worms eat? They love to eat decaying leaves. Worms pull leaves into their holes in the ground called burrows. When they are in their little holes, earthworms cover the bits of leaves with special stomach juices to make them soft and ready to eat. What are those little black things near the opening of a worm's burrow? Those black things are called casts, and they come from the soil that passes through the worm's body. What else do we call food that passes through our body? Casts are great for the soil and make plants grow strong and healthy. 4 more. How many worms live in the ground? In a large field that might hold about 20 cows, there could be many millions of worms underneath. And if they were put all together on a scale, they'd weigh even more than the cows. And how large is the biggest worm? There are many worms in Australia that are 12 feet long, weighing 1.5 pounds each. These giant worms make gurgling sounds when they move under the ground. One worm found in South Africa was 22 feet long. But a tapeworm found inside a whale is the longest worm of all. It was over 65 feet long. It'd be fun to get a measuring tape and see how long that is. What happens if you pull on a worm and part of it comes off? If it is just a small part of its tail, the worm can usually grow back the part it lost. And why are there so many worms on the ground after it rains? Have you ever seen that when you go outside after it rains? They come out and sometimes they're on the sidewalks or the driveway. The worm's burrow becomes flooded with water. Their burrow, their home, underground. So they have to move out into the air. Many die because they get too much ultraviolet light from the sun. This is the same kind of sunlight that gives us sunburn. God's word says, "Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another." 1 John 4:1. And this boy Gabe, he sure loved his mom, didn't he? And he just wanted to give her the right gift. It says here that if you want, you could try to make your own little habitat for worms. It says the best way to catch worms is at night. Take out a flashlight and go out on a warm, still night and look under an old pile of leaves where the soil is wet. If you go out at night, you got to make sure you have permission, or you got to take your parent with you. If you Cover your flashlight with a piece of red paper or plastic. The worms won't know you're out there because they can't sense red. Walk softly so they don't feel the ground shaking. Shine the light around and you'll see them sticking their heads out of the ground looking for food. Fill a glass jar with layers of dirt. Use different kinds of colors of dirt. Place some dead or decaying leaves on top of the dirt for the worms to eat. Sprinkle the top with some water to keep it moist and add the worms. Punch a few air holes in a piece of dark paper and place it on top of the glass. Keep your jar in a dark place and bring it out when you want to see the worms. As you watch the glass over a few days, you'll see the layers of dirt blending together. This is the earthworms, the way earthworms help the soil become better for a plant. And it's kind of like you could do a big compost in your backyard too, or have that little worm habitat. Okay, I hope you liked learning a little bit about critters and worms.